Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at an extremely cool Pokemon in the Open Ultra League, and that is a Rank 1 Ultra League Shadow Gengar. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Firestar73, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Gengar by itself is an extreme glass cannon. It outputs monster damage but cannot take a hit whatsoever, and this is the Shadow version, so even more damage and even less bulk. So, he's going to be running it with some bulky legendary Pokemon, pairing it up with a Tapu Fini and a Registeel. Hopping into the first match, we see a terrific lead Registeel versus Tentacruel. Opponent save switches into Giratina Altered, and that is going to be answered with the Tapu Fini. Honestly, this works out great, because the Tapu Fini finds a matchup that isn't the Tentacruel, and realistically, Firestar doesn't even need switch advantage here. If the opponent is willing to shield a bunch for switch, that's pretty okay for him, because Gengar can do extremely well against the Tentacruel as well, as long as shields are up. Giratina will go for the Shadow Sneak. Tapu Fini just gonna go for the Surf. The Surf is resisted, but due to the debuff from Nature's Madness, that is gonna get the Giratina low. Not gonna be enough to pick up the knockout. Opponent is able to withstand that damage, make it to the Shadow Sneak, and win switch advantage. But Registeel is gonna use this as an opportunity to get a truly massive farm. In the back, the opponent has Zygarde, and this is going to be a difficult fight. The opponent running an extremely bulky backline. Zygarde can just take hit after hit after hit. The good news is Zygarde's fast move is resisted here, but the bad news is that Focus Blast does not look very threatening there as Zygarde shakes off the damage. Registeel no shield. It's a crunch bait from the Zygarde, but thankfully, the Zygarde does not get the defense drop. Registeel firing off another Focus Blast. This again will be no-shielded by the Zygarde. Registeel again calling it. Will the Zygarde finally go for the Earthquake? No, the Zygarde, they keep trying for these baits. Now they're just going to click the Crunch. They're not even building up at this point. It is just going to be the Crunch. We're going to see the switch to the Shadow Gengar. And now, the star of the show, Shadow Gengar, not going to be taking almost any damage from the Poison Jab. Shadow Ball connects, massive damage onto the bulky Tentacruel. Now, Shadow Gengar is going to commit the shield here and get baited with an Acid Spray. That means these Dragon Tails are going to be doing even more damage. One of the glassiest Pokemon in the Ultra League versus one of the tankiest. Shadow Gengar versus Zygarde. Zygarde unable to get the farm down. Shadow Gengar makes the Shadow Punch, knocking out the Zygarde and taking the win. Picking up a pretty decent lead in the next match, Registeel versus Poliwrath. Honestly, the entire team does pretty well against Poliwrath. Counter will hit for super effective damage, but this is not the Great League. In the Ultra League, these counters do not do a lot to Registeel. The Scald will connect. It didn't look like there was a debuff, so the opponent is going to be taking massive damage from the Zap Cannon unless they shield. They will shield. We're going to see the save switch to the Shadow Gengar answered with a Shadow Drapion, and this is difficult. Due to the dark subtyping, the ghost damage is going to be resisted. But here's the thing about Shadow Gengar. It does not really care that much about typings here. The Shadow Ball is shielded, opponent respecting that damage. Gengar double shielding, going to try and overfarm as much as possible and go for the Shadow Ball on charge attack priority. This is a resisted move, but it's two Shadow Pokemon. It picks up the KO. Oh my goodness. In the back, it's another Dark Poison. It's going to be a Lowland Muck. Banking the Shadow Ball for later, sending in the Registeel to bait back out the Poliwrath. Poliwrath fires off energy. If it's a Scald, it can potentially pick up the knockout, and it does. But there's still a full health Tapu Fini and a Gengar with energy. It's definitely the right call to bring in the Tapu Fini, as Tapu Fini is a complete wall to energy from the Poliwrath. Poliwrath, it doesn't matter what they throw. They will go for the Scald, fishing for the debuff, but they are unsuccessful. Tapu Fini with a massive overfarm and firing off the Nature's Madness. This is super effective damage, picking up the knockout. In comes a Lowland Muck. A Lowland Muck is now going to be hit with the Nature's Madness. Nature's Madness is going to debuff the Muck, and the combo play by the Shadow Gengar. Shadow Gengar mono ghost moves. It does not matter, KOing two dark types in one match to take the victory. Hopping into the next match, leading Registeel into, who would have guessed it, yet another Poliwrath. Poliwrath, Unfortunately, I was really hoping that the Scald nerf would make Poliwrath a lot less common in the Ultra League. People are still running this Pokemon like crazy. Oh my goodness. Poliwrath goes for the Scald right away, as they always do, so it's a very safe CMP tie for the Registeel. Zap Cannon will be shielded, and now it's Shadow Gengar time. Shadow Gengar will win Charge Attack priority. Shadow Ball to the Scald. Opponent not even going to build up. They're just going for the Icy Wind. Icy Wind, no shielded by the Gengar. In comes a Typhlosion, but that is not Incinerate. They're actually running Shadow Claw. The Shadow Punch bait gets the shield. Shadow Gengar falls just short of making it to the Shadow Ball. Even debuff that Shadow Ball would have done massive damage, but unfortunately only able to make the Shadow Punch. You're forced to send in the Tapu Fini here because Registeel can never farm down. Tapu Fini not going to get the farm down before Typhlosion does get the double up. So probably a shield one and then probably tanking one because the Shadow Thunder Punch does a ton of damage, but it is something that is survivable, and then just farming down. The opponent still does have that Poliwrath lurking. The Poliwrath, oh, not going to be brought in here. Instead, it will be the Registeel. Tapu Fini farming up a ton of energy, forced to burn the final shield as Registeel fires off the Focus Blast. It's low enough that even a Focus Blast is threatening. We are going to see the Surf deployed by the Tapu Fini. Surf will connect, not doing a ton of damage because this is the Ultra League. Banking to Surf, switching to the Registeel as the opponent is going to be firing off this Focus Blast. Focus Blast KOs the Registeel. It's all up to Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini trying to manage energy extremely carefully. Nature's Madness, not gonna KO, but getting the Water Gun farm down. Oh my goodness, can Tapu Fini get the double Surf? The answer is yes. Will this be enough to KO? Surf number 1 connects, going for Surf number 2. This could come down to the IVs on the Registeel. This Surf into the Registeel, picks up the knockout. 1 HP left on that Tapu Fini, and the game ends in victory. We've got some variety from the opponent in the next match as we see Registeel versus Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko, an incredibly cool Pokemon. We will see the shield on the first Thunderbolt, but the opponent baits with a Nature's Madness. That is an extremely unfortunate turn of events. Zap Cannon, no shielded. We do not see the debuff. It's a 66% chance, so a little bit of bad luck there for Firestar. Opponent gonna go for another Nature's Madness. I'm a bit surprised they didn't Thunderbolt there, because after you successfully debuff once, you oftentimes want to go for damage. They will shield here, and right on cue, there is the debuff. Registeel making it to the Focus Blast, but unfortunately losing Charge Attack priority. Tapu Koko just going straight Nature's Madness after Nature's Madness. In comes the Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini, no shields. The Tapu Koko only knows how to click Nature's Madness. Had they landed a Thunderbolt, that could have been devastating, but now there's a Virizion lurking in the back, and that's going to be a big problem. Firing off this Nature's Madness, opponent is going to no shield. We see the switch and the catch of the Leaf Blade onto Gengar, but Leaf Blade is still going to do a ton of damage here. Look at that. That still does a ton of damage. It's Dragalge in the back, and Dragalge makes a really heads-up play to fire off the Aqua Tail. This pressures the final shield from the Gengar, who really wants to try and get damage off here. We're going to see the Shadow Punch bait. Dragalge going to no shield. Gengar getting the last-second Shadow Punch. The opponent actually deciding not to throw their fast attack there because they want farm on Virizion. That's a really heads-up play by the opponent, and I mean, there's just nothing Tapu Fini can do at this point, as Virizion will make the Leaf Blade. That picks up the knockout. Good awareness there by the opponent, understanding that Virizion up energy was just a win for them. Moving to the next match, Registeel into yet another Poliwrath. This time it is Shadow, but my goodness, man, there are other Pokemon. You don't have to run Poliwrath, I promise. It'll be okay. They are going to go for the Scald. Again, no shield by the Registeel. Zap Cannon, grab the shield, and then it's Shadow Gengar time. In comes Shadow Gengar. Opponent is going to respond with a Skuntank. Looks like a shiny Skuntank as well. Definitely a pretty cool shiny. Going for the Shadow Ball, and that does a lot of damage there for being resisted. My goodness. Gengar has to shield everything. A Crunch would be lethal. We're going to see no debuff on the Crunch. Shadow Gengar playing to the CMP tie, which, of course, it's a Shadow Gengar. It is going to win. Opponent is going to let that through. Down goes Skuntank. Skuntank really didn't make a lot of progress here. In comes Drapion. And again, Gengar overfarming, playing to the CMP tie, and let's see this Shadow Ball damage. The Shadow Ball takes out 3/4 of its health almost. Gengar saying the job is done, letting it go. In comes Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini farming up energy. Opponent is going to bank a potential Sludge Bomb for later and send in Poliwrath. But Poliwrath is just cooked here. The Nature's Madness gets shielded. Well, guess what? That just means the next one is going to do more. Like, this does not help the opponent. They can go for Icy Winds to try and offset that potential debuff there. They go for a Scald. They don't get the debuff. And now this is just a Nature's Madness onto a -1 defense. It's just going to KO. In comes the Drapion. We see the shield from the Tapu Fini on the crunch. Tapu Fini gets the water gun down, and that's another Poliwrath team taken care of thanks to Shadow Gengar. Registeel sees a great lead versus Tentacruel. The Tentacruel staying in, so it's probably going to be one of those Tentacruel teams that are just core broken by Registeel. I used to run one back in the day that was Tentacruel, Greedent, and Guzzlord. It was a really nice team because there wasn't a lot of Registeel, but I do think Registeel is very strong right now, and it's back in a big way. We are going to see the Zap Cannon debuff there. The 66% chance does occur. They're going for another Scald. And he is running a very high rank Registeel, so these Scalds, especially after a Zap Cannon debuff, are not doing a lot. Going for a Focus Blast and a Farm Down, gets the Farm Down. That's a beautiful play. In comes Annihilate. We see the pivot to Tapu Fini. And the hope is that the Annihilate will switch out, because it's going to get absolutely crushed by Shadow Gengar in the endgame. The Shadow Ball will connect. It's a Mandibuzz in the back, and once the Tentacle's gone, they're just completely core broken by the Tapu Fini. Oh my goodness. They shield the Nature's Madness. Their defense now debuffed. Tapu Fini not going to get knocked out by an Aerial Ace here. Aerial Ace from a Mandibuzz, not known for its damage, making the Nature's Madness, winning charge attack priority as well. And this opponent in absolute dire straits. The Mandibuzz at -2. Honestly, you can just send in the Gengar here. These Shadow Claws are actually going to add up. This Mandibuzz, not used to having this low of a defense stat, and the Gengar farm is on. They can switch into the Annihilate, but it's not going to save them. In comes the Annihilate. That's double Shadow Punches reached, and this Annihilate is cooked. They're just going to concede the match right away, and that will be game over. Great lead. Registeel versus Clefable. Opponent safe switches, and there it is, the Poliwrath. But since they safe switched in, and Switch takes a turn, they're not going to get the Scald before this Zap Cannon is reached. Zap Cannon will get the shield. Registeel going to stay in, wanting the opponent to throw some energy, and then you can just send in the Tapu Fini. The Scald will connect. In comes the Tapu Fini, because even if the opponent is able to shield a bunch, try and potentially make a play for Switch Advantage doesn't really help them if their Clefable is stuck against either a Registeel or a Gengar. Opponent firing off more energy with the Poliwrath. It's another Icy Wind, so this is now a -2 Nature's Madness. So the opponent can no-shield here. So the Nature's Madness is going to be no-shielded, and the Switch Clock is up. Opponent taking advantage of those desync timers, sending in the Clefable. Clefable will be met with another Nature's Madness. Again, this is heavily debuffed. It's not going to do a whole lot of damage. Clefable, its defense has now been debuffed, however, so potentially, if you wanted to, you could pivot out of here. Going to see thought about banking a move, but instead just going to fire off that Surf. And unfortunately, we are going to see the full farm down by the Clefable. The nice thing here is Clefable's energy goes nowhere versus the Reggie. They still need 2 moves to KO, so they will go for the Moonblast, and now it's Gengar time. Gengar just going to go for the 1 shield farm down, as Gengar with energy can be very deadly, shielding up the Meteor Mash, but disaster! It's Guzzlord in the back, and this is where Focus Blast would be so beautiful. If you have Focus Blast, there's a win con, but oh man, Shadow Gengar has KO'd Dark types before, but this is a Guzzlord, and it calls the bait as well. Oh, and that's going to be game over. Gengar, Shadow Ball, gets shielded. Registeel just not going to be able to get there, as the Guzzlord makes the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw does not actually KO there, so Registeel makes the Focus Blast, but unfortunately, there's still the Poliwrath, and Poliwrath will be able to take that win. Hopping into the final match, Registeel met with another Fairy-type lead in Sylveon. Last time, though, leading into Clefable, the game did end in heartbreak, so this time, looking for a little bit of redemption. The Giratina save switch is unanswered. Registeel can do quite well here. Registeel would love to get a Zap Cannon debuff, tank a move, and then potentially switch out of here. So the Zap Cannon will connect. We do not see a debuff. That's unfortunate for the Registeel. Again, 2/3 of the time, you get it, but that means 1/3 of the time, you do not. Registeel continuing the farm. Registeel farming up to over 100 energy. My guess is we should see a switch here after the Shadow Sneak, and we will. In comes the Tapu Fini. Opponent, switch clock is up. They're going to send back in the Charmer. Sylveon isn't good for much in the Ultra League. Like, there are just significantly stronger Charmers, but it is a relatively accessible one. They shield the Nature's Madness, which means these water guns now are just going to shred through its HP. Firing off the Surf. The Surf into the debuff Sylveon gets double shielded. Oh, they have made a costly mistake. They gave up both their shields, and there's a Shadow Gengar that they're about to meet. In comes the Shadow Gengar. Shadow Gengar looking for the full farm down. This is the easiest shield in Go Battle League history. Just go for close to 100 energy on the Shadow Gengar, and then let Shadow Gengar feast. And it's redemption. It's a Poliwrath in the back. Shadow Gengar, Shadow Ball, massive damage. Gengar going to fire off the Shadow Punch, and Shadow Punch is going to remove Poliwrath from the field of play. All that's left is the Giratina. Giratina going to be hit with the Shadow Punch as well. And this is going to be a Shadow Gengar Rampage. They'll switch into the Registeel and the Bad Manners Focus Blast as well. Double resisted, knocking out the Giratina. And that is a good game. All in all, Shadow Gengar is going to be a very difficult Pokemon to use, but it looks to be an incredibly fun Pokemon as well. When running Pokemon that are this glassy, running it with bulkier Pokemon, like in this case Registeel, is going to be a requirement. Like we saw, I mean, at the time of recording, Firestar was able to hit Veteran, so within like 150 to 175 points of the leaderboards. So it can be really fun to run the triple glass cannon style teams, but when it comes to trying to gain elo, pairing your glassy Pokemon with some bulk is definitely going to be the successful strategy. So big congratulations, and the next time that there is a Team Go Rocket event, I'm going to have to try hunting these Shadow Ghastlies, because man, that thing looked to be an absolute blast to play. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.